great guy. I met him. What a
He's
nice, good guy. Great for LA.
Really good guy.
I'm a Rams fan. So
yeah.
Good.
All right, hey, Fish. We are talking so much sport tonight. The World Series is starting, but this could be it for baseball for a long time. We'll explain. The NFL is roaring. Meanwhile, we'll get perspective from our special guest tonight, Ron Mott, former NBC News correspondent who has a deep pedigree in sports too, including his new sports newsletter, I should say. We get his takes on a lot of stuff. Plus, our Schmuck of the Week is not flying high, and who's got the swag is a flying high wanderer. And get this, our binge, you like that, didn't you? Our binge and book is the same work. That's right, a film and a book, both from a king. You didn't even hear that one. That's how good that one was.
I heard it from a king, like you. Go ahead.
As always, we have some betting picks with the Daly Fish Hardline. John Hardison has a number of games, including the big battle for the Fremont Cannon. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Daily Fish. John Daly here, along with Eric Snyder, a.k.a. Fish. We are coast to coast, coming to you from Las Vegas and Myrtle Beach. We talk about sports, entertainment, and everything in between. Fish, we got another good one tonight.
Oh, yeah. Hardline's great. Hardline, if you watch what he's done, he kills Fish. You got to get the over in the UCLA-Oregon game. I did, and it was the over. He's spot on, and we got Ron Mott on today, and he's wearing a jersey. You'll see a jersey he's wearing that's close to my heart, even though it's not my team. So
yeah,
let's
he's impersonating somebody who could really run. That's for sure. So we'll have him on in a little bit. All right, it's time for the daily grind. Here's what we're grinding on. First, the NFL. They had 6 teams on buys last week, but there were some wake-up moments. Fish, what hit you this week? What hit you, I should say, in week 7?
It's hard to believe it's week 7. I'll bring it on with Hardline. It goes so fast. We're in the World Series, and we're almost halfway through the season. I think you're going to mirror me on this. I was shocked at 2 games that Tennessee actually blew the crap out of Kansas City. I know it was in Tennessee on a short week after beating Baltimore. Great 2 wins, signature wins. And John, what about the Cincinnati Bengals going into Baltimore and just blowing their pants off 41-17? Those are the 2 things that really stood out for me in week 7. What about you?
Yeah, I was the same way too, because I last week we talked about, and I mentioned, I think the Titans are a surprise team, and they certainly did that. The Bengals, for me, that was a huge surprise. Again, I got Cleveland Browns in my family, so they're kind of like, ooh, boy, and they were fabulous. Patriots look really good, but then again, they were playing the Jets, so anyway, we'll see. But I think there were some interesting trends that we both actually predicted the week before. That's going to lead to our picks for week 8, which is on Halloween weekend. All right, first, Packers at the Cardinals. Fish, who you got?
Well, the Packers have 2 of their top receivers out in COVID protocol, and Devontae Adams and Allen Lazard. But even if they didn't, I'm still going with the Cardinals. I think right now, and I say it every week, Kyler Murray is having such a superb season. He's the MVP right now, and I think he carries that along with the defense that's risen up from last year. It's in Arizona. I think they go to 8-0.
I agree with you. I got the Cards at home as well. All right, Steelers at the Browns. I'm going to go with my family, and I'm picking the Browns, relying on their defense. What do you got, Fish?
I'm going with my family. I don't want to piss my wife off. I'm going with the Steelers, although I'll tell you what, the Browns are all hard. 7 starters on offense last Thursday night. Case Keenum's he's not a backup. He's like a decent starter in the NFL. I'm going Steelers, but I wouldn't be shocked if you won.
Okay, Pats go west to see the Chargers. Who are you picking?
The Chargers are coming off of a bye week, John, and I like this. I really like the Patriots. I like Mac Jones. He's the best of the rookie class right now, but I'm going with the Chargers. I think they're going to be rested up, and don't forget, we talk all we want about Joe Burrow, but Justin Herbert's in that same class as a second-year starter that's a stud.
I'm going with you too. They're home. The Pats do not travel well, especially when they go to the West Coast. So that's why I'm going with that too. All right, Buccaneers at the Saints. I'm going with the Buccaneers. The Saints won a tough game on the road last night, but they didn't look really good as far as I'm concerned. What do you got?
I'm rooting. I picked Jameis Winston to be the comeback player of the year this year. I think he's a good manager of the game. I just think that they're hurting receiver-wise. Real quick, the Raiders let go of Willie Snead today, who's a good receiver. I think he resigns with the Saints because they're still missing Michael Thomas, but I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. Again, if you're talking about the MVP race right now, Tom Brady's right there with Kyler Murray.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, Cowboys at the Vikings. Who you got, Fish?
I'm going to go with the Vikings. The Cowboys are the sexy pick. But there's something that the Vikings have lost some really close games, and Kirk Cousins is, even though I can't stand the guy sometimes, I think he's really having a quality year that's going unnoticed, under the radar.
All right, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I just think they're too strong. And again, I'm more of a Giants fan. I look at the Cowboys this year and I go, they're a really good team. Other times I would watch them in years past and I go, they're not that strong. They're strong now. So I'm going to take the Cowboys in this one. All right, those are our picks. John Hardison will have his in just a moment. More on the grind here. The NFL trade deadline is a week from today. Fish. So do you think Deshaun Watson will be traded from the Texans?
Well, Miami's in the conversation, and so is Carolina. I mean, the Sam Darnold thing's not going to work. Deshaun Watson gets traded if one thing happens. The NFL doesn't suspend him. Why would you trade for a guy and just basically throw your season away if he's going to sit in the bench? He's on a paid leave right now. The NFL knows something we don't, and he hasn't been indicted on anything. It's kind of washed away. He gets traded if he can play. If he doesn't, it'll wait to 2022.
Okay, we'll be watching that. Are you seeing any other deals? You already mentioned one before. Are you seeing any others?
I think Cleve Farrell, who was the fourth pick in the draft in 2019, defensive end for the Raiders, underachieving. I'm hearing some other teams. I'm hearing the Cardinals. The Raiders might get a fifth. The 49ers are looking at him, and that's a disappointing team also. They can use some help on the defense. And I think there'll be some other trades of guys like, who's that? Who does he play for? But that's the only name I think out there that people would recognize.
Okay. All right. World Series starts in just a few minutes. Neither of us had the Astros and the Braves. So, Fish, who do you like?
I love Dusty Baker. I go back to my days in L.A. growing up. I love him as a Dodger. He's a class act. He's a nicer man in baseball. But he manages a team that admitted to cheating, and they got slapped in the hand. So I got to go with Atlanta for one reason. My first cousin's son played ball and went to college with Max Fried, who's a starting pitcher for Atlanta.
Oh, no.
So that's it. The good thing about it is you have two big markets in it, and they don't have much. I mean, the Rockets, the Hawks are decent. They have no hockey teams. The football teams, okay, the Falcons are all right, but Houston Texans stink. So it's good for their cities. I'm going to go with Atlanta.
All right, I'm going to go Houston. I like Atlanta like you do, but they have not been there before. The Astros have. Plus, the Astros might not have Correa or Gurriel next year. They will probably want to get it done before they see them go. All right, looking ahead, you might want to enjoy this World Series because baseball might be on a much longer hiatus. Fish, we keep hearing about a player lockout or walkout since the contract between the owners and the players union is done after this season. What are you hearing?
December 2nd. And Rob Manfred, who's the commissioner of baseball, said it's almost a certainty, 100%. I mean, the owners want to impose a salary cap. The top six pitchers for the Dodgers, you give me their names. It's Urias, it's Buehler, it's Scherzer, it's Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, and the guy who was suspended, Trevor Bauer. They make more money than an entire NFL team. It's crazy. $402 million. It's Manchester United is the soccer team in England is the only team in sports that has a bigger payroll than the Dodgers. There are owners, and John, baseball's dear to your heart. It's your favorite sport. There are owners that love getting that luxury tax and like putting that money in their pocket, but it doesn't help the Kansas Cities, the Pittsburghs, the Tampas, the Oaklands, the small market teams. The great thing about the NFL, and I think Ron Mott and John Harrison will agree with me, is that Green Bay, which was one of the smallest market in sports, had the same money to pay for players that Dallas and the New Yorks and LAs do. Baseball's killing themselves by not getting a salary cap. The players are going to – I always root for the players in a labor strife. This time I'm on the owner's side. Sorry. I want to save the sport.
I'm with you 100%. My fear is that if there is a strike and the season doesn't carry on, it could really hurt the game. I don't think it'll end it, but it could really hurt it. You could see a lot of markets that will collapse, and you're going to see a lot smaller number of baseball teams. All right, so the Hot Stove League might have the burners turned off. Keep it here. We're going to keep you updated on that. A quick grind here. Shout out to Bernhard Langer, who on Sunday became the oldest winner on the PGA Champions Tour. He got his 42nd win at the age of 64.
That's great. We had a guy on a couple weeks ago, Fiore DeRosa, who has a show called Super Seniors. There you go, Fiore. There's a guy who did something incredible at a senior age, and kudos to him, John. I love it.
Well, and it kind of ties in. Earlier this year, Phil Mickelson became the oldest winner on the PGA Tour by winning the PGA Championship. He was 50 years old, so pretty cool. Finally, on the grind, we want to reminisce about the pioneering play-by-play announcers that paved the way for guys like Al Michaels, Joe Buck, and Jim Nantz. Or they were the guys that I should say paved the way for guys like, we had Pat Summerall, we had Kirk Gowdy, Vin Scully, Chick Hearn. And how about some of the new guys in the block like Gus Johnson, Joe Davis, and Andrew Catalan? Fish, what are you thinking on this?
I'm passionate. We did a thing a couple weeks ago about Al Michaels, and I think the younger audience should know that I was so blessed. And if Ron could jump in a while, because we had some L.A. reminiscing. I grew up in L.A. with Dick Enberg. There is a guy that he was the voice of the Angels in UCLA. Vin Scully is the penultimate baseball announcer for the Dodgers. Okay, if you love hockey, Bob Miller is a Hall of Fame guy. But Chick Hearn for the Lakers, not only was he a homer, but he was so entertaining. I give it one story. In 1971, I'm 11 years old. I'm listening on the radio, and the Lakers are playing the Washington Bullets. Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld. And I remember the Lakers are down 35-7 in the first quarter, and Hearn goes, Unseld to Elvin Hayes, slam dunk, blow the Lakers out, close the game down. He was so great being a homer. But we had some great announcers because a lot of it was radio announcing back then, and you use your mind to they would build a scenario where they could paint a picture for you that you had to listen on the radio. And Bill King with the Raiders was great in L.A. So, and these new guys, Gus Johnson by far is the best. He can make a 4-yard run sound like they just won the Super Bowl.
I love it too. I'm with you 100%. Last week, the book of the week I had was The Summer of 49 by David Halberstam. And one of the interesting things, there's another book by Red Barber about 1947, the year all hell broke loose in baseball. And when you had Red Barber and you had guys there that were starting TV, they came from radio. So you're exactly right. They painted a picture, even though the game was being seen on TV. I grew up with Kirk Gowdy. He was the voice of the Red Sox, and Mel Allen, the voice of the Yankees, because I was on the East Coast. So I grew up with them, and to me, they were fabulous. I didn't learn about Chick Hearn until later, once I got out to the West Coast. Plus, I met Pat Summerall one time before he passed away. He's a great guy. He announced a celebrity golf event that I actually won, and he was so fun and so insightful, and he was one of the nicest guys around. I'm sorry that he has passed away. But I agree with you on Gus Johnson. I love Gus Johnson because he does a lot of the Big East games. So I get to hear a lot of that, and I get to hear him. And I got to tell you, I love it. There's a lot of announcers out there. I turn the sound off, and there's some great ones that I keep it on. So Gus Johnson's one of the ones I would never turn off.
I think the play-by-play announcers now are terrific. Some of the analysts, there was a guy doing a Raider game recently that didn't know it was 33-14. He goes, it's a 2-score game. Look at my son goes, where's the math there? But Pat Summerall admitted that when he did all those games with Tom Brookshire, they were drunk the whole time, and you never knew it. Knowing you, that I know your love for libations. Did you and Summerall have a few belts when you were doing it? He
probably
professional. John Madden said he would not be the kind of guy he was in the booth if it wasn't for the tutelage and the mentorship of Pat Summerall. So, go back and look at your history. We got a guy here in Vegas, Hardison will tell you, Brent Musburger is 83 years old, does a decent job doing play-by-play for the Raiders.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, if you have questions or comments during the live show, use the chat box here or email us at dailyfish1, the number 1, dailyfish1@gmail.com. You can post to Facebook at daily.fish.5. Better yet, record yourself short, tight, and horizontal on your smartphone and send it to dailyfish1@gmail.com. All right, binge watch and book. It's time for some binge watch and books. And this week, as we said, we have one choice in both film and books. I am reading the Stephen King book, 11/22/63. And Fish, you're watching the miniseries from that book.
I watched the miniseries. I read the book, and I said, John, it's an 1,100-page book, and you just got into it, and it is phenomenal. James Franco plays a lead character. And it's a Stephen King feel-good thing about a guy that could walk into a portal in a diner, and when he walks back into that portal, he goes back to 1958 with the sole intention of trying to stop the John F. Kennedy assassination. You got to read it. There's so many twists, how he gets involved in Lee Harvey Oswald's life and the intricacies and the way King just has his attention to detail is phenomenal. The miniseries stays right intact with the book. Love it.
That's good. I'm dying to see the miniseries. It is riveting, no boring moments. Now, as you know, I'm not a big reader of Stephen King's horror books, but his classic book called Different Seasons had Shawshank Redemption in it and Stand By Me, 2 incredible works. 11/22/63, it's just as good. I cannot put it down. So great suggestion on your part. I am enjoying it immensely. And that is the Daily Fish Binge and Book. All right, now time for something fishy. What do we have, Fish?
Here we go. The glasses go off.
Uh-oh.
Ron's new to this because that's where I get pissed off. I want to say this as a precursor. I love Stephen A. Smith. I think he's the most honest guy on. He says what he feels. He doesn't care if he pisses people off. He says what he feels. And you know what I do? I get up in the morning, I get my coffee, I walk my dog, I talk to John at 5:30 in the morning. I piss everyone up in the neighborhood because I'm loud. We're talking sports. I go home, I watch every show in the morning. Get Up, Sports Center, First Take, Shannon and Skip, Good Morning Football, Pro Football Talk with Florio and Chris Sims. So what pissed me off, I think we're getting too bored. I'm an idiot for doing that. I'm a savant. I want to gather all the information so I can have a segment like this. The Lakers played Golden State last week. Hardison will give us the day. They lose the first game of the season. The first topic the next morning, when you have all these NFL games, you got the baseball playoffs are intriguing. ESPN covers baseball. Hockey season starts. They did 48 minutes. Him, Kendrick Perkins, even Keyshawn Johnson jumps in. I'm not pissing off ESPN. I know they have their audience. And they're serious. Are the Lakers in trouble and done? One effing game. Stop thinking we're so stupid as an audience. You cannot sell that to me, okay? Your audience cannot be concerned about the Lakers losing one game. You know what concerns me? If they lose 10 in a row, the Lakers. If they lost that one game and Anthony Davis and LeBron, God forbid, got injured and out for the season, that's your top story. You got to stay away from this, guys. I know I don't produce your show. I know I'm not the John Hyatt of the business. I just don't have that kind of hearsay to call you guys. I write you letters all the time. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the producers thinking that we're stupid as an audience. You got to talk about, this is last week. You got to talk about the Dallas-New England game, which is phenomenal coming off of last week, before this last week. This is what I'm talking about. So I'm getting worked up over this whole thing. But you know what? Let's cover the sports that mean something. Again, a 10-game losing streak in basketball for the top Lakers, it's a huge story. Losing one game and saying the Lakers are in trouble and spending 48 minutes on it, it's bullshit. So I'm not buying it.
All right. You got to put your glasses back on? Okay, then we know
a little bit. I got to get a Hardline. Hardline's our NBA guy, man. I want to see what he says in a few minutes.
We'll hear him, and we'll also check in with Ron Mott just to see what Ron says about, because he was NBC News. He might have a better idea on how good the research is for these different media companies.
Well, I'll give you an analogy. That's like Ron being a local anchor at NBC News in LA and going to the weather guy for 40 minutes about it being sunny and 73. The marine layers coming in the next morning over mountain.
I love it. Hey, just
over 0-1.
Yep. Just a quick update. The Braves are up 1-0 in the first inning over the Astros, game 1 of the World Series. All right. Still ahead here, our Schmuck of the Week, along with Who's Got the Swag. Time now for the Daily Fish Hardline. Joining us is John Hardison from the podcast The Cost of Winning, focusing on fantasy sports. John, welcome back. Let's get right to it. There he is. Let's go to college football first. Oregon State heads to Berkeley to take on the Golden Bears. What do you got?
So I'm going to take the over in this game at 55 points. Oregon State's a really interesting team. They have top 10. They're a top 10 rushing team in the country. Very under the radar for most people just because of where they are. You don't get to see them a lot. They have 21 rushing touchdowns this season. Cal actually has a top 40 quarterback as well. I like the over in this game. I think it's going to be a shootout.
Go for it.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to say that we have a football team, a college football team called University of Nevada at Las Vegas. But they play Reno, and that's a big game. What's the spread? 20 points in this game? And I want to ask you, I'm going to bet it. Do I do a super teaser and lay an extra 150 and get like an extra 10 points? Or are they going to get their asses kicked?
So it's going to be bad. I mean, I don't have much hope for UNLV. Nobody's going to ring the slot machine on this game, but you know what? I'm taking a plus 20 point, a big rivalry game. They usually keep it relatively close, especially the last few games that they've played. It's been within that margin of 20. So just to err on the side of caution, I'm going to take UNLV, even if it's just a pity touchdown at the end.
Yeah, but it's for the Fremont Cannon. So come on, that's the biggest trophy in college football. So come on, it's big.
Much better than the Paul Bunyan, let me tell you.
All right, here's a tough one. Miami Hurricanes head to Heinz Field to play the Pitt Panthers.
So this is an interesting team, especially doing research on Pitt. They're really good. I mean, really good this season. They're 6-1. They have a top 10 quarterback. He's fourth in TD passes. He's 23 TDs, 1 interception, and they have a top 20 receiver, and Addison. He's got 10 touchdowns this season and 670 yards. They've beat Clemson. They've beat Virginia Tech. They've beat Georgia Tech. At this point, and how bad Miami is, where they don't even know if their coach might be there next year, I'm going Pitt. I'm even taking them on the money line. And if you want to take the +9, I wouldn't blame you either, or -9.
You know I love you as a person, and you're a friend. John Daly is a friend, but I think you're a masochist, Hardline. The Lions host the Eagles. There's no Cannon. There's no Paul Bunyan. I hate to say it. We might talk about this later in Schmucky. This is the toilet bowl. What do you got?
You know what? It's a terrible. This might be the Lions' only game they might win this season. They had an over/under of 4.5 games to win this season, and I'm not gonna lie. I bet the under. I did not see this team doing that well. I'm taking the Lions +3. They were good against the Rams, actually, surprisingly, last Sunday. They held their own. They barely lost to the Vikings. They've barely lost to the Ravens as well. I don't see anything that Philly's done that's spectacular. I think that Jalen Hurts is under duress almost every time he tries to step back. That Lions defense, I take this as their one win. I'm taking a +3.
Okay. A little bit of heart in that one too. All right. Cowboys go to the Vikings. That's Sunday night. What do you got?
So this is actually a game. I'm taking the 54.5 over. Fish, you brought up something that was really interesting earlier, and that's how efficient Kirk Cousins has been. He's amazing. He's right now 13 TDs and 2 interceptions on the season with 1,800 yards. Him with Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and then on the other side, when you're looking at Dak Prescott, where he's got the weapons of Ezekiel Elliott, he's got CeeDee Lamb. I'm taking the over. I think it's a good old shootout.
If they get Dalvin Cook healthy, there's another weapon for them. Here, I'm gonna bring this. I want both you guys' opinions on this. I heard on one of the shows this morning, the Jags head to Seattle. If the Seattle Seahawks lose this game, Mike Florio said there's an 80% chance that the Seahawks are going to try and move Russell Wilson. What do you think about that game, and what do you think about that prediction about Wilson?
Well, with that game, even if I had to pick, I still pick the Jags. Looking at that team, they struggled. I mean, watching them last night, it was a bit of an embarrassment. If you're going to move Russell Wilson, that means that you're pretty much saying that we're getting rid of Pete Carroll as well. We're going to go ahead and do a complete rebuild on that team. So if you really want to move your best quarterback in franchise history, you want to Joe Montana him to a certain degree, best of luck to you, but I don't know how many tickets you're going to be able to sell next season up in the Pacific Northwest.
All right. What do you have the Jags at? What do you have them at plus?
Plus. They're the plus team going into Seattle. And honestly, I think that looking at the way Seattle's only good thing is Bobby Wagner. Right now, that's everything else. Everybody else is either injured or on IR. Tyler Lockett is struggling. He is struggling in that offense. Can't get anything going. He and Geno Smith don't have much of a connection going. I will take my chances on Marvin Jones and Trevor Lawrence to get the job done.
Okay. Before we go, give us your top fantasy pick of the week.
So my top fantasy pick is actually going to play in tomorrow's game. It's Christian Kirk for the Arizona Cardinals. He's had 2 TDs in the last 2 games. He's averaged 6 targets, especially that DeAndre Hopkins is going to get most of the coverage, which is either going to leave him or Zach Ertz open. I think he's a better downfield stretch. Go with Christian Kirk definitely for tomorrow or for Thursday night's game.
All right.
You got AJ Green. Sorry, John. AJ Green is a decoy. Real quick before I let you go. Are the Lakers done when they lose? When you think they were done at 0-1?
You know what? People get sticker price shock real quick. No, I don't think that they're done. I think it's just taking them time to kind of get themselves together. Everyone forgets that the Heat, another LeBron James team, in 2012 started off kind of rough when everybody thought that this was going to be their year, and they got it together. It just takes time to build that cohesiveness between LeBron, Melo, Westbrook, just everyone getting to know each other. They're not done. They're going to be fine. They're going to make the playoffs. They'll probably win. They have a strong shot of winning the division as well.
Hey, if they stop hitting each other on the bench, they'll probably win a lot of games.
Toughness breeds champions, right? So you got to start early.
All right, there it is. And that's the Daily Fish Hardline with John Hardison of the Cost of Winning podcast. You can find him here with us, but also on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts as well. Jon, thanks. We'll see you next week. Great job, buddy.
See you next week, guys.
Thanks for making me money.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Daily Fish is live on Facebook Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We air on DB&A television on Roku, Amazon Fire, and soon Apple TV, plus the Myrtle Beach Golf Channel. We stream 24/7 on the DB&A television website. Follow us and like us on Facebook at daily.fish.5, and also you can subscribe to us on YouTube. Now it's time for our Schmuck of the Week. Who has been schmucky this week? Fish?
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. This is probably the crew at Frontier Airlines, because John, maybe I can add this story to this or what have you, but they had to land because the smell coming from the bathrooms was so bad that they had to do this. They had to land, and this is the guy out there that when they landed had to go through and delouse the entire place. You know, if you ever been on a plane and they have two laboratories, one in the front and one in the back. Some people get on planes and they take the whole 30 minutes to use a laboratory. Okay, I've been on planes like that. Yeah, and you knock on the door and I have to go, and you say, "Can you get the flight attendant and have them ask them if they have War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy?" I have to read chapter 7. Some people are just that ignorant and arrogant and mean. John, do you know anybody like that? Have you ever been on a plane with someone like that?
No, but you've accused me of that.
Okay, well, yeah. John tells pregnant. Okay, John's on a flight with me. He tells a pregnant woman, "I got to get in there first," and doesn't get out. It's like Tommy Boy. Remember when the fat lady came out of the thing and went like this? I mean, persons are like, this good-looking guy's doing this to the plane. Well, Frontier Airlines just had an incident like that. John wasn't on that plane, but someone must have heard this story and said, "I'm going to pull a John Daly on Frontier Airlines." Let's move on.
All right, there we go. All right, who's got the swag? Let's see who's got this week. Who's toasting?
I love this. We're going to toast this guy. Let me get there first. I call this guy Diamond Franco. This is an MLB rising superstar, Wander Franco. He's a top prospect. The top prospect. And he has a new meaning to car customization, guys. Ron, I know Ron's watching this right now in Hardiston. He copped a brand new Mercedes-Benz AMG GLE 53 with the steering wheel decked out in diamonds. That's $250,000 worth of diamonds in that steering wheel. How cool is that? You know, I mean, who's insuring that, number one? I got to show that again. That is absolutely sweat. That's badass right there. You know, this kid's going to be trolling down and talking to the girls at every town gets him. Tampa Bay, I think Tampa Bay is going to get him. When they lose to Rose Arena, this guy's going to roll down and tell all the girls, "Look at my riding vehicle. Get in here. Touch that ice."
I got to tell you, he's a stud already. I mean, he cleaned up in the second half of the season. He really actually got them a lot to their 100-plus wins. So, so it's time now to toast with our drink of the week. What are we sipping here?
We're doing a Kyoki coffee. The weather changed here in Las Vegas. I know Hardline can tell you that. I woke up this morning, the dog was 49 degrees. So let's have a nice Kyoki coffee. Brandy, Kahlua, and coffee. It'll warm you up all times of the days. Give you that extra punch. The brandy will get you a little higher. The Kahlua is good. And then, you know, obviously the coffee, another high on it. And a big favorite, besides Bloody Marys at Chuck's Tavern on North Durango, that's a very popular drink.
Especially overnight. All right, here's to you. Here's your toasting to Wander Franco. I got whipped cream all over my face. It's perfect. Oh, yeah. Very nice.
You see Wander Franco going down the streets and open the door and go, "Just touch my ass, bitch."
All right. Daily Fish Drink of the Week is sponsored by Shuck's Tavern in Vegas. Great seafood and drinks in 2 locations. Head to Shuck's Tavern on North Durango on the northwest side of town where fish is overnight. Say Daily Fish Podcast. You get a free drink. Do it the next day, a free appetizer. That's right. That's Shuck's Tavern. Check out Shuck's Tavern on Facebook. All right. We're just getting started. We're going to gab with Ron Mott. He is an award-winning NBC News correspondent and current creator of a sports newsletter called Sportsopoly. But first, let's tell you about MedSonics. In Vegas and you're in pain, you got to go to MedSonics. The sound wave technology relieves pain, and it is non-invasive. You sit there for 25 minutes and you relax. I have used it. It works. Plus, it helps with jet lag, too. The technology And this is new stuff. It's beginning to happen. It's going to be all over the country soon. So if you're in Vegas, go try it out first. Go to medsonics.com. It's spelled MEDSONIX.com. Al is the owner inventor. Tell him Daly Fish sent you. All right, let's bring on our special guest. He is a former NBC correspondent and anchor. He is also the writer of the sports newsletter Sportsopoly. Ron Mott. Ron, welcome to Daly Fish.
Guys, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Eric Dickerson?
I am. I saw that. Let me just stand up for a second. This used to swim on me, and now look how tight it is.
Nice.
You've been weightlifting.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I brought some color, some brightness to this show, since Fish deserted my team back in the day for the ultimate enemy in the Raiders. So I just wanted to make sure to bring some of that Rams brightness to this broadcast tonight.
Well, thanks. Great having you. Go ahead, Fish.
No, I love it, and I know. I look at your great dossier. Your resume is great, and one thing that stood out to me is that you worked for the Kansas City Chiefs in the '80s, and you must have heard all the crap that they did. That the Hunt family and the Davis family are like the Hatfield and McCoys. So you were stuck in that, and the Raiders back then, when you worked, were a very good football team. So I can only imagine what you heard in that facility about the Raiders and vice versa. And tell us about working for the Chiefs back in the 80s. And I want to get into more about basketball in the 80s too. My favorite era with the Lakers, with Magic and Showtime. But talk about working for the Chiefs in the 80s.
Well, I can tell you, the Chiefs were not very good. But, we had such a rivalry with the Raiders that even the front office staff disliked Raiders personnel and players. It wasn't just players versus players. We hated everybody. We hated their president. We hated their owner. We hated their director of media relations. And I'll never forget one game. We're playing in Kansas City, and the Raiders are in town. And they walk in to the press box. Their little entourage comes in, and O.J. Simpson was with them that day. And so they all come in, and a hush comes over the press box because they come in with such an air of arrogance into our press box, like 5 or 6 of them, including OJ. So everybody's head turns and they all walk to their seats. And I mean, I'm fuming, thinking, look at how arrogant these guys are. We walk into their press box. We're just there to do our job and hopefully get a win and get out of there. They ended up beating us that game. And, we always, before every game, would make an announcement. I worked in public relations, would make an announcement to the media. This is a professional media event. It's a working event. Please refrain from cheering in the press box. First good play that the Raiders make in the game, you hear this roar come up from the front row, and we all look over. It's OJ and that gang. They didn't care at all. I mean, there are people working, reporters working on their stories, and the Raiders are over there watching the game as if they're at the tavern. And so we were all, we hated them. And I don't hate them as much as I did. But we don't like the Raiders. So that's why, Fish, I was like, wait a minute, you grew up in LA? How did you once love my team and then dump us?
I still love your team, but I told you this on our rehearsal when Georgia Frontiere said on remember, Jim Hill is, John, you might know who Jim Hill is. He's still a local anchor. He lives on. Jim Hill is 74 years old and looks as good as you, John. He had Georgia on it. She goes, no one wants to play in that dump in the Coliseum. LA's a dump. Well, we took that. Al Davis said, I'll come down. And what did they do in their first full year they were there after the strike run? They won the Super Bowl, and that's it. LA's a winning town. I dealt with Chuck Knox for 7 straight years, losing in their first round to the playoffs. I was there. I never lost my love for the Rams. I had season tickets for both. So that's that. So we're going to talk about the Gruden thing in a little bit, and we'll get to the Lakers. But real quick, your family, the Clark family you work for, the Hunt family, and you got the Rooneys, you got the Mayors and Tisches in New York, Blank, Daniel Snyder, and Jerry Jones. That's the X-Files. Remember the X-Files had the guy with the cigarette that ran everything? That runs the league. The reason why you guys hate the Raiders so much is by the time you worked for them, Al Davis had taken $1 billion in lawsuits from those 6 families. So that's why you hate the Raiders so much. And I always said this. And you see it now, even though what Jon Gruden did was horrible with the emails as far as the content, I said, as long as the Davis owns his team, the NFL will never, ever give him a break.
I think there's some long-standing bad blood between Park Avenue and the Raiders organization. But I will say this about what happened with the Gruden situation. There's a Al Davis was such an important giving spirit of a man, and he gave a lot of African Americans opportunities that other clubs wouldn't think in 100 years of giving. And so I will respect him always for the contributions that he made to the game. Now, the lawsuits against the NFL, I mean, that stuff that dragged on for years and years and years and years was not good for the league. They survived it. It was ugly. And there was a little bit of bad blood that carried on all the way through until Al Davis passed away. But he was a good man who did a lot of good things for the game. And I still love that rivalry between the Raiders and the Chiefs. It's not as rich, I don't think, as it used to be, partly because the Raiders have moved around so much that you don't really – I mean, they have a very national fan base, but I always love those games when it was Oakland against Kansas City, L.A. against Kansas City, and now we've got Vegas. And I've got a place out there, so I'm hoping to maybe catch a game here and there.
Oh, cool.
Maybe when the Chiefs come to town. And you guys were mentioning, if I could just mention, you were talking about Chick Hearn. The reason I'm an LA fan, even though I grew up in Kansas City, is when my parents split, my dad moved to LA. And so I just quickly read up on all the teams there and just became a big fan of the Dodgers and the Rams and the Lakers. And I would have my dad send me cassette tapes of Lakers games on the radio. And that's how I got to learn about Chick Hearn. And I would listen to these tapes. I just listen to these games over and over and over and over and got to hear all of his little catchphrases. I love that guy. He was such a great, colorful broadcaster.
One of the best I loved was when he was doing a Lakers game and Elgin Baylor had the ball down below. He's got him in the popcorn machine. He's doing the up and down like this. I thought that was one of the greatest phrases of all time.
He was the best, man. He was the best.
Yeah. Speaking about Jon Gruden, because you're a correspondent and you're a journalist, I mean, what is it an old boys club, Ron? Why aren't any other emails being leaked? Now there's close to 700,000 emails. If Jon Gruden's saying all this vitriol in an email to a guy, two things happen. I said this in the last podcast. Either Bruce Allen tells him, stop, I don't want to hear that crap,
right,
or he's engaging in it. And why aren't we? And Daniel Snyder's involved. Why aren't we hearing it, in your opinion?
I mean, I think there are a number of reasons. I mean, one, I think that there are, some other people, perhaps owners, who may have written things back and forth with Dan Snyder and other executives there with the Washington football team that the NFL doesn't want out. Somebody clearly in New York had it out for Jon Gruden. And I've never met Coach. I think he's a good man who apparently said some things in writing that I'm sure he would want to have back. And I said, when that story broke, I sent out on Twitter, I said, you know what he said was deplorable. I think the right call was made to remove him from that job. But let's not cancel him as a human being, as a person. He's a decent guy. I can tell that he's a decent guy. And having worked with some of the folks at NBC who have worked with him through the years, he's a good guy.
He is a good guy. A good guy.
I don't know if he was
I covered the Raiders from '98 to 2002 for AOL, and he hasn't. I mean, I know John and I know guys that work for the Raiders right now. He really is a good guy who got caught in an email thing and said some bad things, but it's he understands what he did was wrong. He understands that, and he understands he said hurtful things. He just wants the whole story to come out.
Well, I mean, a lot of people do. I mean, those women who filed suits against the Washington football team want all of those emails released. I think the NFL is going to hold its feet firmly and say, no, we're not going to do that. They claim that they didn't leak the Gruden emails, but somebody in New York got that information out publicly. Because Jon Gruden's name was on the target list by someone, and they got rid of him. He's a young guy. I mean, he's 58 years old. Hopefully, he's able to once this kind of settles down, he's got to have a conversation with the country and with sports fans and explain why that was perhaps in his heart when he wrote those things about the people he wrote about, and how he's changed over the years. Because the first apology was really not an apology, and I don't think it served him well to say what he said in the immediate aftermath of that. And maybe a few months down the line, he's had a chance to think about it, talk to his close friends, and if he wants to get back into football, I'm not sure that the NFL is a place for him in the near future, but you never know. He's a good coach. I wouldn't call him a great coach, just based on the records that he's produced. But he cares, and he's a smart football mind. And I hope it doesn't ruin his life. This one moment in time where his communications were released publicly.
Our prediction last week was that he would be doing what we're doing podcasts. Because he's actually be perfect for something. He can't go back on NBC. He can't go back into the NFL. He might as well start his own podcast. He'd probably be really successful at it. Hey, Ron, talk about the race norming concussion settlement by the NFL. What'd you get on that?
Well, so here's the deal. And I wrote about this over the summer because I thought, why is the sports world not paying attention to this story? Here's the NFL basically admitting, after being sued, that they were using race as a factor in determining whether a former player who may have suffered from head injuries deserved compensation, purely based on race. Because the theory goes that the white players started off in life smarter basically than the black player, and so their cognitive decline would theoretically, according to that theory, fall far further than the African-American player. And I thought, my goodness, it doesn't get any more racist than that. And so they were sued and they decided, well, we're going to stop doing that. And the story sort of popped for a day or two and then it disappeared and people were like over it. And I'm like, wait a minute. How do you expect the African-American fan to show up at the stadium cheering as if nothing happened when the league has basically said, you guys aren't smart enough to get as much money as the white players, even though you've suffered theoretically from some brain damage from playing this game. And I thought that story should have gotten a lot more attention than it did. It's kind of come back here a little bit, but it just it didn't resonate the way that I thought it should. And hopefully they are honest and true about stopping that kind of discrimination from players who essentially gave their lives to the game and are now suffering at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years old from playing this violent game. And to think that they have perhaps shorted some guys out of what should have been a little bigger disability check every month just breaks my heart, because I love the game. I love I thought I would have a 40-year career in the NFL. And it was so disappointing to see that happen.
Sure. It was, and that movie Concussion was one of the great Will Smith's performance in that, and Albert Brooks, and the greatest line ever in a movie. He goes, "You're going to go up against Ron." He goes, "You're going to go up against NFL. They took Sundays away from the Catholic Church." I mean, that's just a powerful line about this league. Let's segue into something. I'm so excited that you won an Emmy for your coverage of Hurricane Katrina. Well, the huge natural disaster, that horrible hurricane hit in 2005. Talk about that and talk about some of the human interest stories you came across, how people really helped other people in New Orleans during that tragedy.
Well, let me just a slight correction. Miami was for covering the presidential election in 2008. I went down to Kenya and watched the election returns with the Obama family down there. No, that's okay. The Hurricane Katrina was quite a life-changing story.
My bad. No, that was my bad. That was the information we got. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Hurricane Katrina. I think we won some awards at NBC for that coverage as well. It was an incredible story. I wrote out the hurricane. I don't know if you guys have ever been in one. They are intense, and I wrote that out in Mississippi. And it was a rough storm. It was a rough storm, and I'll never forget that night. The storm had passed that Monday afternoon. It was over, and we all were told to start driving west. And when I got to Biloxi, Gulfport, I can't remember which that night, I saw a guy. I mean, your heart goes out because you know that people have been devastated. And we were going down the main drag. I think it's Highway 49, and I saw a guy carrying a large television. And my first thought was like, oh my God, this guy, this is the one thing that he wanted to save in his life was this large television. And he's walking town is pitch black. There's no power. And I see him coming down the highway, and I'm thinking, my heart just immediately broke for him. And then someone in the car said, no, I don't think that was his TV. I think it was somebody else's TV, and it's now his TV. But it was I did 15 years at NBC. It was a great job, and I'm sort of happy to be sort of semi-retired now because the travel for a job like that is intense, and it's great. It's a wonderful life-changing experience to get a job like that. But after 15 years of traveling and not having much personal time, it was time for me to sort of get away from that. And sports was kind of how I got into the business. I was a sports writer in Kansas City, 6 or 7 years with the newspaper there, covering boxing and high school sports. And I wanted to kind of get back to that. And so this newsletter was a way for me to do that. I'm mostly interested in just kind of staying sharp as a writer. But I want the pieces that I write there to start a conversation with readers. That's what I get the biggest kick out of, is bantering back and forth with sports fans about lighter topics, heavier stuff, because people are so passionate about their sports, and it's nice to have that passion be pulled out into a conversation that's productive. But yeah, I sometimes miss the TV game, but most times I don't. I love my life now that I don't, get called at 3 a.m. to go fly somewhere. It's heaven. It's heaven.
Talk about sportsopoly. You were at the Wake Forest Army game. That was like the college basketball game. Talk about sportsopoly and talk about being at that game and what you're doing right now.
So I go to this game. A good buddy of mine has been an Army season ticket holder since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. And so when I saw the schedule come out, I hadn't been to a game there in probably 20 years. And so when I saw the schedule come out, I said, I called him. I said, please save me a ticket. I'll pay you, but I want to go to the game against Wake if I can get there. So we go to the game. It was just great. The experience there is phenomenal. If you haven't done it, it's more than a football game. And you see all these young people who are going to be our military leaders in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And you're just so proud, to be there and to see that. The game itself was insane. And I thought I turned to Seth. I said, where is the defense? And we had one punt in 60 minutes, one punt and 126 points. It was a crazy game. And you guys were just mentioning about the Schmuck of the week. I should have told you the Schmuck of the week I sat next to on the flight home Saturday night. This guy, I'm flying a certain airline that doesn't sell reserved seats. So you kind of pick a seat when you get on the plane. And so I'm a big guy. I go back to the exit row and I'm like, ooh, that exit row window's open. That's going to be my seat. So I'm walking down. I get to the seat. I get to that row and the man tells me he's sitting in the aisle seat. He says, I'm saving that seat for a family member. I said, well, no, that's not how it works. I said, you can go sit there yourself and I'll take this aisle seat. So long story short, he ends up getting booted off the flight because he thought I had violated some cardinal rule at this airline.
Wow.
That I was taking a seat that he had, quote unquote, saved for his loved one. And, he was not going to buy my argument that it's okay if you want to save the middle seat. But I'm not going to let you claim 2 premium seats. Anyway, so the game was outstanding. Sportsopoly is a little project that I just got launched about six or 7 weeks ago, and it's on the Facebook bulletin platform. And I had been thinking about some similar things to do, and it all sort of just came out of nowhere. My agent called me back in the spring and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing nothing, man. And you know I love doing nothing." He says, "Well, let me throw something at you." And a couple of meetings later, I sent out a pitch, and they were like, "We love this." And that's kind of how the whole thing got started. It's great to be back into the kind of the daily writing of sports. I miss that a lot because you don't really get that in TV. You write 50 seconds, John, 50-second, minute, 15-second stories. And it's hard to tell a really good story in so little time. So it's just kind of nice to get back to a keyboard and your own thoughts about what you want to write. And I don't have an assignment editor. I just kind of get up and decide what I want to write about that day. It's wonderful.
Well, the Wake Army piece was great, was really good. You really kind of brought us in there. It's funny. A trend that I'm seeing in news is that newsletters being delivered to emails and phones, a lot of people think they could be actually taking away local TV news, something like that. Do you see something like that?
I do. I think, there is I think a desire among the consumer to get information literally 24/7. And you can't get that from NBC. They're on with the Today Show for 4 hours in the morning or 3 hours in the morning, and they've got a half-hour evening news program. And that's it. In between, you've got all this other programming. And for people who just want to consume information, this is the way to do it. And I think some of the research is finding that a lot of people want to hear from independent writers as opposed to, mainstream media outlets. They want to, they want to get to know you on social media. They like your writing. They'll follow you, and you build this relationship with them. I love newspapers, and what's happened to that business since I got my first job in the newspaper business. I was in high school in 1984, and so many papers have died in the last almost 40 years. I just never imagined that this would happen, but technology has changed that. I mean, we didn't have, the internet, obviously, back in the mid 80s. If you wanted to find, if you were a kid living in Kansas City and you wanted to find out more about, your LA Lakers, your dad had to put a cassette in the mail. And he would send me LA Times clips so I could read the box scores because there was no other way to get it. But so I think the technology has changed a lot. And I think the appetite of the consumer has changed a lot. They know that because of this technology, they can get almost anything at any time of the day. And it feeds that need that they have. The traditional newspapers and the traditional media just can't respond that way as quickly as, say, I might be able to as an independent writer now. If I want to write something after your show here and I put something up in the next 40 minutes, well, if I worked in a traditional job, that may take a day or two to get it pitched, get it accepted, get the reporting done on it, get it published, vetted, and out there to the masses. And I could do that in an hour.
I throw this at you and John. You're both journalists, you're both anchors, you're both field reporters. And are you disturbed, Ron and John, when I talked earlier about all the shows that are on the morning talking about the same thing? It's sensationalism, journalism. Who can get the loudest speech out? Who can say the craziest thing? The Lakers are 0-1. It bothers me to watch it. I'm not a journalist like you guys, but who's going to cover an 0-1 team and saying they're done for the year? Does that bother you guys that it's gotten to the point that it's who could outsay the other one and make some kind of a statement that's going to grab an audience?
John, you want to grab that first?
No, I'm going to let you go. You go, Ron. Go for it.
Well, I heard you earlier, Fish, about that. It's entertainment. And when you're talking the big market teams, the LAs, the New Yorks, the Chicagos, Dallas with the Cowboys, those are those teams that people want to hear about. And so we had all this talk about the Lakers retooling with all these old guys coming in the offseason. And I don't typically watch a ton of NBA basketball like I used to, but I did watch that entire season opener against the Warriors. And I just knew that, that the next morning, the round of shows were going to be all about, how bad the Lakers are going to be this year. I think the average fan would say, they know that they're sort of being toyed with by these shows and these producers to elicit that kind of emotional response out of the host. I don't think anybody thought after the first game that, the Lakers are in trouble. I mean, I joked about them, being so old that, they're going to have to wheel out some oxygen containers to get these guys through 48 minutes. But I think it's because the competition is so stiff, especially in TV and radio too, to some degree, but especially in sports TV. You gotta get people in the tent and gotta get them in the room. And the way to do it is to say outrageous stuff. It's part of the formula. One of my favorite shows, if I can plug, a show that I really like is the Dan Patrick Show.
Yeah.
I typically will listen to all 3 hours of that show because Dan is a tremendous talent, great interviewer. He's not one to allow hot takes like you hear after the Lakers lose to Golden State to dominate his show. They may talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes, but that's it. And he's always there as a calming, reasonable voice to say, let's take a deep breath here. It's not time to overreact. But you are right, Fish. This is how you get an audience. And I'm sort of learning that with this sports newsletter is, I don't want to be ridiculous and to a point where you become a caricature. But it's tough to build an audience, and it's tough to keep an audience.
Ron, we got to have you back on again. We're just about out of time. Great stuff. We really appreciate you coming on. Folks, we've been talking to Ron Mott, former NBC correspondent and anchor. He's also the writer of the sports newsletter called Sportsopoly. You can sign up for it at sportsopoly.bulletin.com. And Ron says it's free.
It is free.
So free. What a great deal. That's for sure. Hey, Ron, we got to have you back on again. Thank you so much. There's so much more we'd love to talk to you about. That's for sure. But stay in touch and we'll definitely bring you back on again.
Thank you, guys. It's such a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And coming up, Fish and I wrap things up. We'll give you a sneak peek at next week. But first, need a great golf getaway? The Myrtle Beach Golf Trail has dozens of courses along the Carolina coast. Set up an entire trip for yourself, your family, or a bunch of your friends. The site is myrtlebeachgolftrail.com. You can play there year-round. It is absolutely fabulous here right now. All right, Fish, let's wrap things up. That was another great show that we had. Ron was spectacular. Man, we definitely have to have him back on again. There's so many things that he was talking about there at the end. I kind of wanted to hit him with on, what goes on with these, the ESPNs and all that, what they're thinking. Hey, next week we got a great show. We're going to talk to actresses Lee Purcell and Heidi Holliker, both in the classic film Valley Girl. So that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, we might get E.G. Daly and Deborah Foreman. We have a foursome of girls on with us. That'd be great.
Wow. That could be scary.
Can you handle it, John? There's no hot tub or stripper pole, but we'll do our best. Ron brought up a great point about the ESPN, this and that. Think about this. Dan Patrick, I love. The two talents that left that network and took big risks are Dan Patrick and Rich Eisen, and their shows have better ratings than any ESPN show. And they have made peace with the mothership, they call. A lot of times, they now can have their talents on their show. So I'll get those guys on the show. But yeah, next week's going to be great. And John, we're doing this thing called the Daily Remote on Saturdays. Where are you going to be this Saturday? You planning on anything?
I'm not certain. I'm looking for different places to kind of, where you and I can kind of review games coming up, and then I can show off some of the areas down here in the Myrtle Beach area. You're going to do it at some point, showing off some Vegas stuff. So haven't figured it out yet, but folks, stay tuned for that because we're going to have that. And also remember, Daily Fish is live from Vegas and Myrtle Beach. Catch us on Facebook at daily.fish.5. We're on DBNA television, on Roku TV, Amazon Fire, soon Apple TV, the DBNA television website as well. And also we're on the Myrtle Beach Golf Channel. We're on YouTube as well. You can write to us at dailyfish1@gmail.com, posted Facebook at daily.fish.5. And I'm looking forward to next week, Fish. I mean, we've got some. This is like 27th show. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I'm like I said every time. I'm so honored to be with you. I make fun of you, but I love you. You're a huge talent. But let me give you some advice. I'll bet you can find an Irish bar somewhere in North Carolina and sit at the bar and have a drink and have a college football game in the background, and we could just BS about that. So we'll find you somewhere Saturday, and let's keep this great thing rolling, buddy.
Absolutely. And folks, if you can, sign up, follow us on Facebook and also YouTube. And so when we do go live with the Daily Fish remote, you'll get it right away and get it on your phone and all that. So we're dying to have you follow us and, send us what you want us to talk about on the show. We want to talk about what you want to talk about.
Right. This guy's been to an Oyster Festival. He's been to an Oktoberfest. So we'll go there and we'll tape it and you can be a part of it.
All right. Fish. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, buddy.
Love you, pal. Appreciate it.
You
See
too.
you, everybody.